When we first started Your Eco, it was very much a commitment to people, planet, and profit. And profit is not a dirty word. With profit, you can deliver impact. We have a saying internally that we fail fast here, and that includes when you're resourcing. I look for the best possible people I can afford. I want to hire somebody 10 times better at everything that I have weakness in and things that I am good at. I think when you hire them, you get out of their way. If they've been crafted, they've been trained appropriately, and they have a good system around them, let them fail fast and recalibrate. So we always say surgeons don't go to work thinking everything's going to be okay every day. You will be dealing with the hardest parts of your business on a daily basis. So you almost get okay with things that are going to go wrong. That perfectionism that pervades, it can really mess with you. Clear is kind. And that is in management style, that is with yourself, that is with your investors, that is with your clients. If people are feeling in the dark for where they need to be, then that is going to be a major issue down the road.
Amanda, thank you very much for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what you're currently doing?
Hi, good morning, Chris. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Amanda Spicer. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder at Your Eco. I have a background more in biotech and pharmaceuticals, but switched into the cleantech space over the last decade with the opportunity that's being presented in the net zero space.
What was it that led you into sustainability, and how did you end up becoming COO of Your Eco? I know you said you were one of the co-founders, but I remember the story slightly more complicated than that, isn't it?
Well, I think when you have a family business, it can always become quite complicated. I think there's value in being able to run a bootstrapped SME alongside a corporate job. So I think when I speak to young entrepreneurs, it's very much around the side hustle and what you need to be doing to take care of your own family bills, but then also being able to grow a business to where it can support both of you. So I think from my perspective, it was being able to support my other founder in the growth of the business, but only really truly coming back into a full COO role in the last few years, especially with the energy crisis and much more noise and momentum gaining around the decarbonization strategies in the UK.
From what I've seen, Your Eco has had incredible growth over the last couple of years. Could you share some of the key drivers behind that growth and that success?
Well, I think in any kind of business, if you do what you say you're going to do and deliver on that, you're able to build a business network and relationships that can grow. I think when we first started Your Eco, it was very much a commitment to people, planet, and profit. And profit is not a dirty word. With profit, you can deliver impact. I think when we were first setting up the business, it was very much around meaningful business, and that's very much sits in the heart of why we're a B Corp now, and that we're able to deliver not just cost-effective bespoke projects that have aesthetics, but also a lasting business network that can help us grow. So we very much networked, we did advocacy pieces, we made sure we were knowledge transferring everything that we're learning in an embryonic industry that probably hasn't had much support until recently. And then I think, one thing that we really made sure is that we put the foundations of our business to be set upon business principles that we really believed in. So things like the Be More Buffalo, which is how we approach project management. So instead of acting a bit more laid back, that we want our teams to be pushing forward and going towards challenges head on. And I think that really aligns with sort of where we are as a business. One of the other things that we had to look at when we were growing at a rate was how we were going to organize ourselves internally so that we could make sure that standards stayed at the top. So one of the things I was trained in the corporate world was Kaizen, which is sort of a systems optimization and workflow process that I was able to take the company through. And now we have a legacy of having Kaizenized. So we have a leaderboard with different members of staff being able to compete on making good change. So it actually translates into the Japanese to good change. And then we just layered that alongside what we say is military precision. A lot of our team are ex-forces. In that project management, you get consistent high quality outcomes. So we were able to grow to a staff of over 20 with 40 more subcontractors. So then that allows us flexibility when we're looking at overheads and being able to scale up or scale down, a bit like an agency approach to how we do our project management.
For those that are watching that aren't aware of Kaizen, are you able to explain it in a couple of sentences?
Yeah, so I think one thing that we had a look at was if you're going to make a change in your organization, it's really good to have a structured format. So we had something called a wildly important goal, and underneath that sits lead and lag measures. So we're able to sort of say, we want to scale up our organization. We could see our commercial pipeline growing. We wanted to be able to have really clear, concise ways that we were going to bring in new changes. And that means bringing in your entire team, being able to pull apart everything that maybe one person does and start to break those into different departments. So we were able to map all of that out into what they call swim lanes so that you could have a one-page visual control over what you were doing. So when you are winning or when you're losing, and at the heart of that sits really strong KPIs and analytics, so that when we were having meetings, it wasn't meetings for meeting's sake. It was being able to pinpoint where our growth was coming from, why it was coming from that point. And so really underpinned everything we did to streamline all the processes in which we were able to grow.
I like that you said both leading and lagging measures there, because I think what tends to happen a lot is people focus on one or the other. It's easy to measure either inputs or outcomes and then miss the other side of the picture. When you experience as much growth as your eco did, it can be a bit difficult to balance both the operations side of things, also getting new clients, getting new people through the door. How was it that you managed to balance both of those at the same time? You mentioned just then bringing staff in as needed, but were there any strategic or other operational things that you were doing?
Well, yeah, I think as well, when you're a co-founder and you're running the operations, you're looking across at a bird's eye view. So you can see the commercial pipeline growing, you can be organizing the operations team. But once you do that, you've then created yourself a massive overhead on a monthly basis that needs to be addressed. So I was able to partner with recruiting agencies. I was able to access some of the levy funding from the government that implements really strong training courses. So my teammates were able to get Chartered Institute of Business Management qualifications, sales qualifications, things that they needed in operational management and leadership that probably as a small SME didn't have the budget for. And so I think as we were acquiring new clients, that rapid growth it was difficult. But I think I tell my team now, 95% of the hard work has been done. When you've got the systems and processes and workflows, we used a software called Monday.com, and I worked with a consultant out of Spain to be able to put in handrails so that when somebody could go off on holiday or needed to go off sick, somebody else could tag in. And I think it's really important when you're growing to have a really strong, scalable workflow system so that when that growth occurs, it's being much easier now to manage that down the chain instead of just hoping that people knew what they were supposed to be doing or emailing each other in that kind of instance when there's a very small team that can be able to be done. But we've been able to definitely move past that now. We had to keep one eye on our ROI so that long-term investment was equaling long-term growth. And then we were able then to leverage sort of positive referrals. And I think, a big part of growth is also doing your appropriate marketing. So that's another hat that I tend to wear in the SME world. And, we were able to get drones for our field supervisors. We were able to upskill. I think we spent somewhere in the region of 300,000 in the last 18 months on upskilling our teams. Because once you do a job in solar, it's one rooftop and done. But actually, it's that referral network that sits behind either the facility managers or it sits with people that know other business owners. And you need to be able to have visual demonstration of what you've done. So I think when we were able to form partnerships with some of the consultants, whether they are M&E consultants in the construction world, whether they're facility managers or they're sustainability consultants, we're able to point to our YouTube channel of all of the different size projects that we've been able to complete. And I think it's really important that you can demonstrate quickly and visually what your company is really good at doing.
Sure. I think case studies are such a missed opportunity in B2B right now, especially in sustainability. I think a lot of people are relying on data and numbers. And yes, that's important. But at the same time, even in B2B, people buy from people. It becomes about that storytelling. And I'm massively bullish on video case studies at the moment. You mentioned partnerships there. I think partnerships is another really big part of what can make sustainability grow quite quickly over the next few years. Part of the reason why I'm doing this podcast, as more people speak to each other and learn from each other, the whole industry can grow much quicker. You mentioned there about staff members being able to come in and do the work so that they know what's there. Do you feel like as part of a leader in the organization, while it's processes and managing and auditing, how big would you say expectation management is for new staff members?
I think I read a lot of Brené Brown, who does a lot of work in social research and how teams are cohesive. And I think one of her podcasts that I listened to recently with James Clear on Atomic Habits is that you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And I think when people come into our organization, the first thing that they're presented with is sort of a color-coded, what we call a RACI, who's responsible, who's accountable, who's going to be consented, and who needs to be informed on every step of our process. And I think when people are very clear, and she speaks about this as well, that clear is kind. And that is in management style, that is with yourself, that is with your investors, that is with your clients. You need to do what you say you're going to do. But if people are feeling in the dark for where they need to be, then that is going to be a major issue down the road. And I think one of the roles that I've really enjoyed in the CEO time here is being able to tangibly point to that workflow change and the real accountability and that real clear line. And it took a lot of meetings. It took a lot of pulling it apart, a lot of whiteboard sessions. We got the old school whiteboard out and sort of drew, me and my ops manager, how this was going to look and how it was going to work and process. And we were really clear with people as well that it was in beta. Like, this is going to change, guys. This is a living, breathing thing. And that's something that Kaizen points to, is that it's system optimization, not for optimization's sake, but for improvement. And I think when we toured a recent warehouse at Jaguar Land Rover, they have a Kaizen leaderboard. So if you can improve the operational process by moving the tea bags 2 steps closer and it saves somebody X amount of time, once you've made that change, you go on a leaderboard and you go in a competition within the company. And I think that's really, really healthy. And I think that's something that we really push on here at Your Eco, is that I don't understand sometimes the complexities of the roles that sit below in my ops team, but the person who does that job every day does. So it's really important for me to give them the mechanism to put their hand up and say, "Ooh, I'd like to make change here." And when you're small and nimble, I've worked for billion-pound companies that this kind of change was really difficult. But at SME World, we're able to give that empowerment to our employees. And I hope that gives them that sort of sense of pride. And we work in a Kaizen once a month where they have dedicated time to come to me with their blue sky thinking. These are the projects that they see that need improved and they would like to scope and work on. And then I work on that with them and keep track of it so that we can really see that systematic change that's really helped us in this growth phase.
You're the COO, but you don't necessarily need to know how to do other people's jobs better than they do. And I think that's a struggle so many founders deal with in sustainability. It's really hard to delegate sales to someone else because you feel no one else can do sales as well as you do. But actually what you want to do is hire someone that can do it better than you because they specialize in that. So many sustainability founders struggle with recruitment. Do you have any advice for founders to let go of some of the tasks they have and allow someone else to take it over, even if that person will have, say, lower close rates at the beginning, because they're specialized in it and they will accelerate quicker?
We have a saying internally that we fail fast here, and that includes when you're resourcing. And so I think I really agree with the idea that I look for the best possible people I can afford. I want to hire somebody 10 times better at everything that I have weakness in and things that I am good at. I think when you hire them, you get out of their way. If they've been crafted, they've been trained appropriately, and they have a good system around them, let them fail fast and recalibrate. Because actually, when we're looking at renewables, I think one thing people think is that renewables is sort of warm and fuzzy, but actually it's at height construction, lots of health and safety and compliance. So I need my younger project managers, especially because I hire young talent, to make mistakes, but do it in a way that is safe. So we talk a lot about psychological safety. I went to a great TED Talk with Margaret Heffington, who's speaking on this quite a lot around competition internally and how you manage that and how you really push for leaders, especially being able to come to the meetings and put we start with what Nick and I, who my other co-founder is, what we messed up this week. Here are the things that we didn't do well. So that vulnerability piece is incredibly important to create a space with young teams where they feel like they can speak up. When you create a culture where people are pitted against one another, nobody speaks up. I've seen it happen. I've been in those cultures, and it's absolutely what we're trying to avoid here. And I think we can go for a drink after it. But I say to my staff a lot, please take this professionally. Don't take this personally. And I think that's something that we can really learn and build on, so that while we're hiring teams, we have to understand that we might have had a 25-year career being able to do this quickly. That's why we get paid what we get paid. But when we have younger people coming into the team, They need to be given the space to make the mistakes, but then know that you are there supporting them and that you're almost expecting it, and that they then feel that they can continue to push in their role, always putting quality first, focus on the precision and reliability of every project, but then giving them the space. Like when you're hiring the best talent that you can hire, the worst thing you can do is micromanage them and kill off their spirit.
I wanted to move slightly back into the client acquisition side of things. So you said you experienced really rapid growth. It sounds like a lot of that came from referrals. Is that the case, or was there some strategy that you used to get out to people?
When you're looking at an embryonic industry like renewables, you don't have people with decades of experience. So the fact that we've been going almost a decade has been really helpful in the customer acquisition. So when you're looking at to let out a part of this project in the built environment, you might have some really, great people internally at a construction company that understand the electrics and mechanical sides of these jobs. But do they really understand all the components, and have they spent the time deep diving? No, they just want to sublet it and move on. And so I think for us, it was making sure that our teams were triple STS qualified, that our project managers were Prince 2 qualified, that we had technical directors with, multinational experience, so that we could be able to build our technical portfolio. And then you need to tell people about that. So we went for accreditations, I think, is the way that we definitely started to demonstrate our credibility and our quality. So other than being B Corp, we also got both of our ISOs and really focused on Armed Forces Covenant, so we could bring in disaster relief ex-military personnel that they could then translate into renewables into a new career. So we were able to then use all of those things that put quality at the heart of what we were doing, but then also able to shape what is our narrative around the type of business that we want to be. And I think that resonates with our customers. And so whether you are putting in renewables on a new build that we're currently doing for YTL at Brabazon, whether you are putting in renewables at major PLCs because you're a facility manager, you are just looking for somebody that has demonstrable quality and credentials that backs that up. So I think that was definitely at the heart of the strategy. And then as a marketeer at GlaxoSmithKline and other large PLCs in my career, then it's time to tell people what you do. And I think that's why we are seen speaking and out doing things as much as we are, because it's telling our story and it's showing our capability in this space, especially when you've got low barriers to entry, not lots of regulation. So when you're thinking about renewables, it is a fire risk, it's an insurance risk. So we've been interfacing with insurance companies to start to talk about how this is going to be integrated safely. We've been talking with banks and lending agencies on what does good solar look like, as well as local councils on what the aesthetics can look like, especially coming from a UNESCO heritage city like Bath. How do we bring this in a climate emergency, but do it in a sympathetic way? And I think that has been at the heart of probably where our growth has come from, is that we've worked hard and long to get our reputation to where it is. We fiercely protect that. We hire the best quality, and then we put the right type of accreditations around us so that we are leading on the front foot in a new space that needs leaders, and the ones that are willing to put their head above the pulpit and talk about, not just what went right, but also what went wrong and where are the learns. And that thought leadership is where the real winners and losers are going to be determined.
If you've ever heard of Hormozi's value equation, it sounds to me like you've really focused on trust and perceived likelihood of success. It's really about building that brand and that reputation. I was having a discussion about this yesterday. Brand is about so much more than just the logo and the name. It is the promise. It's the reputation. It's the product itself and how you interact with people. I want to talk about the accreditations since you mentioned them just then. So when it comes to the accreditations, obviously going for them is quite a big deal. It changes your business and culture anyway, but it sounds like they delivered the impact you wanted. It sounds like you've really built up that trust in people. And it sounds a bit like the culture was already there, but were there any real challenges or unexpected areas that those accreditations touched on?
Anytime you go through the process, it's going to highlight what you're weak on, where you're missing a policy, where you haven't really focused your energy. I think my biggest take home is get somebody that is a completer finisher to do it internally. They reinforce transparency and accountability, and it helps that strong sense of identity. So I just recently was able to hire a naval officer because he was looking for a B Corp Armed Forces Covenant company. Now that is quite niche, but because we sit on those lists, that helps us hire and engage talent we wouldn't normally be able to get. So I think they just act as a really strong framework for consistent delivery and quality. And I think if that is what your brand is going to be, then it makes complete sense that we do that. And I think when we're, describing ourselves to people, a lot of those words are the first things that we'll say. And I think, getting those, it's not badge collecting for the sake of it. It's because we really truly believe in it.
What do you see as the biggest challenge facing renewables today? And how is your eco facing that or getting ready for it?
Renewables, it's definitely gaining pace, but there's a mismatch between rapidly evolving renewable energy need and then the slower regulatory changes that create somewhat of a barrier. So there's finance definitely involved now, especially with so much money being moved into the net zero space. But there's no large plays. And I think when we're looking at it, we need projects. So we need demystification of what we can do and how quickly we can do it. When you look at the commercial landscape, only 5% of commercial buildings have been completed. So we have a huge amount to play for. And I think there's going to be some movement, I think, in the next couple of years on EPC ratings so that we are currently proactively engaging with industry associations, different people that have different stakes in this to be able to stay updated on their policy developments and make sure that we are talking to their customer bases and then offering our own internal funding options so that people can get over the financial hurdles to doing this. Because again, when you're looking at a commercial business owner, they have plenty of other landscape issues to be dealing with on a CapEx expenditure before you even start to layer in clean tech technology that they might not understand. When you're looking at paybacks, you're kind of looking at 4 to 5 year payback and no cash outlay if that's the route you want to take. But that education piece takes a long time. So from acquisition to delivery, we can look at 9 months to a year for our cycles. And so if clients are wanting to future-proof their energy procurement, they need a strong partner they can trust. And I think that's probably where we are navigating it in the renewable sector today.
5% of commercial buildings is not much. Do you feel there's a particular area of what you just mentioned there that's stopping those commercial companies from going renewable? Do you feel it's more on the financial side? Do you feel it's more on legislation? Or do you feel it's more that they want to see other companies taking it on first and then they will as well?
As a business owner with people constantly trying to get my attention, there's a lot of noise, especially in the social media space. Knowing where to put your money, knowing where you should go is probably the biggest piece. So education will play a big part of this. And then financially, will you invest in energy or will you invest in a new truck that might be able to help your ROI and your commercial pipeline? So you're constantly battling with what is a energy and business landscape that's been somewhat shaky, especially with the general election and different things that were going on in the legislation environment. We're just kind of waiting for more clear signals from the government currently on which direction that we're going to go, especially around commercial buildings.
And then finally, if you had one piece of advice for another sustainability company, what would it be?
Get used to what we call eating glass. So we always say surgeons don't go to work thinking everything's going to be okay every day. I think the one thing that I've learned as an entrepreneur is that you will be dealing with the hardest parts of your business on a daily basis. So you almost get okay with things that are going to go wrong. That perfectionism that pervades in a lot of these types of people can really mess with you. So I think staying authentic to your values, focus on your innovation, tackle today's complex challenges, and then build the partnerships and invest in your team. But first and foremost, you've got to look after your own physical and mental health while you're doing this. And I think when you're okay with the fact that you're going to be eating glass for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that will be something that would become part of your role. You don't find it as mentally tough as you would if you weren't sure. And I think also get a good mentor. So I always say, get advice from people getting their ass kicked in the arena. It's a famous quote from, I think, Roosevelt, and I think it rings true. You need not just the transactional information from people that are trying to help you from the ancillary services that exist in the UK, but you need other mentors that are also entrepreneurs that you can kind of discuss the real true battle scars that come from doing this. There's a lot of amazing things that come out of entrepreneurship, but there's also a lot of failure, and getting okay with that, I think, is going to be, the biggest advice I can give somebody.
Thank you very much for your time today, Amanda. Do you have anything else to say before we finish up?
No, just if you are wondering about renewables, if you're wondering about entrepreneurialism, please do reach out. Nick and I have become really good at being reactive to people that need support, but then also that tends to turn into better business relationships down the way. So, please do reach out. It's something that we really get a lot of value out of, and, really want to see our industry continually go from strength to strength. And so telling these stories are incredibly important. So thank you so much for the forum.